The crowd came for confidence, swagger, and spectacle. But what they witnessed instead became a cautionary tale that still echoes across combat sports forums. This is a story of how arrogance collided with tradition, how mockery turned into silence, and how a fighting style dismissed as outdated rewrote a man's career in seconds. It's a story about pride, culture, and the dangerous mistake of underestimating what you don't understand. When a top UFC fighter laughed openly at Filipino boxing, cameras were rolling and microphones were live. What happened next wasn't luck, hype, or accident. It was inevitable and devastating. At the center of this story was Marcus "Ironjaw" Cole, a fictional but elite UFC contender known for his knockout power and brash personality. Cole was a striker with a wrestling base, a man who believed modern mixed martial arts had evolved far beyond old-school techniques. During a press interview ahead of a special crossover striking exhibition, Cole was asked about his opponent, a quiet Filipino boxer named Rafael de la Cruz. Cole smirked, shrugged, and laughed. He mocked the footwork, the rhythm, and the angles, calling Filipino boxing flat-footed and predictable. The clip went viral within hours. Rafael de la Cruz was everything Marcus Cole dismissed. Soft-spoken, disciplined, and deeply rooted in Filipino boxing tradition, Rafael had trained since childhood in cramped gyms where technique mattered more than flash. He studied legends, not highlight reels. His style emphasized angles, timing, and deceptively subtle movements. While Cole lifted weights and trash-talked on podcasts, Rafael ran hills at dawn and shadowboxed in silence. To him, the fight wasn't personal. It was professional. But to the Filipino boxing community, Cole's words weren't just insults. They were disrespect toward generations of fighters who had proven themselves on the world stage. The bout itself was marketed as an exhibition, but the tension surrounding it felt anything but friendly. Promoters hyped it as a clash of eras. Modern MMA power versus traditional boxing finesse. Cole leaned into the villain role, posting videos mimicking exaggerated Filipino footwork, joking about how quickly he'd end the fight. Rafael never responded publicly. Instead, he trained. Behind closed doors, his camp studied Cole meticulously. His habits, his defensive gaps, and most importantly, his overconfidence. They noticed something crucial. Cole dropped his lead hand whenever he pressured forward. Fight night arrived with an electric atmosphere. The arena buzzed with anticipation, half the crowd expecting a quick knockout by the UFC star, the other half quietly hopeful for an upset. As Cole walked out, he soaked in the cheers, pounding his chest, smiling for the cameras. Rafael followed, calm and expressionless, his movements economical, almost understated. Commentators framed the matchup as a formality, questioning whether traditional boxing could even threaten an elite MMA striker. Few noticed how Rafael's eyes never left Cole, already measuring distance, already calculating timing. The bell rang, and Cole immediately charged forward, exactly as expected. He threw wide, powerful punches meant to intimidate and overwhelm. Rafael didn't retreat in straight lines. Instead, he angled off, pivoting just inches outside Cole's range. To casual viewers, it looked like nothing special, just movement. But to trained eyes, it was mastery. Each step forced Cole to reset, each miss subtly draining his confidence. Cole laughed mid-exchange, taunting Rafael, motioning him forward. That laughter would become the last sound of arrogance anyone heard from him that night. 20 seconds in, Rafael changed the rhythm. He shortened his movements, baiting Cole into overcommitting. Cole lunged with a looping right hand, leaving his chin exposed for a fraction of a second. That was all Rafael needed, using a classic Filipino boxing angle. He stepped diagonally, rotating his hips and shoulders in perfect alignment. The punch wasn't flashy. It was precise. A short, snapping left landed cleanly on Cole's jaw, bypassing his guard entirely. The sound echoed through the arena, sharp, unmistakable, final. Cole's body reacted before his mind could. His legs stiffened, his balance vanished, and his momentum carried him forward as consciousness slipped away. He collapsed face first onto the canvas, motionless. The referee dove in immediately, waving off the fight. The entire exchange, from bell to knockout, had lasted less than 30 seconds. The crowd fell into stunned silence before erupting into disbelief. Commentators scrambled for words. Replays rolled from every angle, each one confirming the same truth. This wasn't fluke. It was a textbook execution. As medical staff rushed in, Raphael stood quietly in the corner, hands lowered, breathing steady. There was no celebration, no taunting, no exaggerated reaction. When the referee raised his hand, Raphael bowed slightly toward the crowd. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. The man who had been mocked had spoken with his fists, and the message was unmistakable. Social media exploded instantly. Clips of Cole's earlier mockery were stitched alongside the knockout, looping endlessly across platforms. The narrative had flipped completely and mercilessly. In the hours that followed, analysts broke down the knockout frame by frame. Experts pointed out the foot placement, the angle of entry, and the subtle head movement that made the punch possible. Filipino boxing coaches weighed in, explaining how these techniques were refined over decades, born from necessity rather than spectacle. What Cole had dismissed as basic was, in reality, deeply sophisticated. The knockout wasn't just physical, it was symbolic. It represented the danger of confusing evolution with superiority, and the cost of disrespecting disciplines outside your own. Marcus Cole regained consciousness in the locker room, disoriented and shaken. The bravado that once defined him was gone. In a brief statement released later, he admitted he had underestimated his opponent, but the damage extended beyond a single loss. Sponsors distanced themselves. Fans questioned his mindset. Fellow fighters criticized his lack of humility. In combat sports, reputation matters almost as much as skill, and Cole's had taken a brutal hit. The man who laughed to become a lesson, replayed endlessly as a warning to others. For Rafael de la Cruz, life changed overnight. Interviews poured in from around the world. Filipino media hailed him as a symbol of quiet excellence and cultural pride. Yet, Rafael remained consistent, crediting his trainers, his roots, and the fighters who came before him. He emphasized that the victory wasn't about proving one style superior, but about respect. Every discipline has depth, he said. If you don't study it, you don't see it. His words resonated far beyond boxing circles. The story soon transcended the individuals involved. Gyms began revisiting traditional techniques. Young fighters looked beyond trends, exploring styles once considered outdated. Coaches used a knockout as a teaching moment, reminding athletes that fundamentals, timing, and humility remain undefeated. The fight became a case study, not just in technique, but in mindset. It showed how confidence can become blindness, and how preparation often beats raw power. In documentaries and breakdown videos, the clip became mandatory viewing. What made the moment so powerful wasn't just the speed of the knockout, but the narrative surrounding it. Audiences love underdog stories. But this was more than that. It was a clash between noise and silence, between arrogance and discipline. Rafael didn't win because he talked less. He won because he listened more to his coaches, his opponents, and the craft itself. Cole, for all his talent, had stopped listening long before the bell rang. In the months that followed, Marcus Cole attempted a comeback, this time with a noticeably different demeanor, gone with the mocking interviews and exaggerated confidence. He spoke cautiously, trained quietly, and acknowledged gaps in his understanding. Whether the lesson came too late remains debated, but its impact was undeniable. One fight had reshaped his identity. Every time he stepped into a gym, that 30-second clip followed him, a reminder etched into his career. Rafael returned to his home gym shortly after the fight, choosing familiarity over fame. He trained with the same partners, on the same worn mats, refining the same techniques. When asked why he didn't capitalize more aggressively on his newfound fame, he simply said the fight was never about attention. For him, boxing was a language, and that night he had spoken fluently to the entire world. Nothing more was required. The broader combat sports community continued to debate the implications. Some argued it proved boxing's continued relevance. Others focused on the psychological aspect, how disrespect can cloud judgment. What most agreed on was this: no style exists in isolation, and no fighter is immune to being exposed. The moment reminded everyone that combat sports are cyclical, built on layers of knowledge passed down, not erased by trends or trash talk. Years from now, new fans may discover the clip without knowing all the names involved. They'll see a confident fighter rush forward, a calm opponent step aside, and a single punch end everything. Without context, it still works. With context, it becomes legendary. It's a moment that doesn't require explanation, yet rewards those who seek one. A few seconds that capture decades of tradition, discipline, and hard-earned wisdom. For Filipino boxing, the knockout became a point of pride, not because someone was humiliated, but because something meaningful was recognized. It reminded the world that greatness doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it waits, patient and prepared, for the exact moment arrogance creates an opening. And when that moment comes, it doesn't hesitate. It acts. In the end, this story isn't about a UFC fighter losing or a boxer winning. It's about respect in a world obsessed with noise. It's about the danger of mockery and disciplines built on sacrifice. And it's about how, in combat sports and in life, the most painful lessons often arrive without warning and end things in seconds. This is History Media.